Hey there everyone, how are we all doing? I hope you've all had a good and safe week. This week's case actually highlights the need for hope and determination when it comes to these horrible events. It took nearly 3 decades for this crime to be solved, but it was. It has a good final outcome. The people involved just never gave up hope, never gave up searching, and never let the case go cold. And it was worth it. As always, I do have to advise viewers' discretion, as there will be some horrific graphic descriptions. But with that said, I invite you to sit back, get yourself comfy, and join me for a glimpse into a darker reality. The tale of this case actually starts on the day of the horrific event. There is not much background to be told. A young girl called Robin Cornell, who was 11 at the time, lived with her mother Jan in Cape Coral, Florida. They had moved to the Cape Coral Courtyard condos, apologies, in September 1980. Jan's eldest daughter Jenny didn't live with them, so it was just the two of them. And on the day of the event, which was the 9th of May in 1990, which was approximately 8 months after they had moved in, Jan had invited a friend of hers called Lisa Story, who she worked with, to move in as her lodger. Lisa was a secretary for the West Coast Health Foundation, which is affiliated with the Cape Coral Hospital, where Jan worked. She was a lab technician for outpatient services, so they had met through work and formed a good friendship. So on the 9th of May, they spent the day moving Lisa into the spare room. As it got closer to the evening, Jan received a phone call from her boyfriend inviting her over to watch a movie and just hang out. He hadn't seen her all day, wanted to spend a bit of time with her, and Lisa offered to babysit so that she could go. She stayed at the house until the nighttime. She waited for Robin to go to bed. She tucked her in at about 10:30 at night, gave her a kiss, told her she loved her, and then left the condo at about 11 p.m. She said that she closed the front door, but there were 2 catches for the front door and only one of them was working, so only one of them was closed properly when she left. And she left and she went to her boyfriend's, and like any normal person sitting down to watch a movie at 11 o'clock at night, she fell asleep on the sofa. This is a daily occurrence in my house. I put a film on, I cuddle up to my partner, and I passed the fuck out. So I totally understand it. So she woke up at 4 a.m. on the sofa, and this was actually close to the time when she was due to start work. So she grabbed all her stuff and raced home to double check on everybody before having to go to work. She said when she pulled up that there was instantly an eerie feeling. And she walked up to the property and she could hear faint footsteps inside, which is scary and terrifying, because it sounds like she literally missed the perpetrator by minutes. But she tried the front door and actually both of the catches were shut, so someone had pulled this door closed, and she couldn't get through it. So she managed to get round to the back, and luckily the back sliding door was open. And she entered through the sliding door and just took her into the kitchen. And one of the first things she noticed was that there were family photographs that had been taken off of shelves around the house, and they were laid out on the ironing board in the kitchen. Jan felt like this was a message or a warning of some kind, but this has never been explained as far as I could find. Whether the perpetrator was looking for another victim, or just maybe they were just being nosy and being like looking at the photos of the family. I don't know. I honestly don't know. But this was one of the first things that Jan noticed, and it made her feel very, very uneasy. And she quickly ran up the stairs to check on Robin. Now, Robin was sleeping in Jan's bed. It looked like she'd been placed into a specific sexual position. So she found Robin and she called 911 and started to administer CPR. In interviews since, she said that she knew that Robin had gone, but she couldn't accept it at the time, so she was trying to cling on to any hope that she had that she might be able to resuscitate Robin. And the whole time that she's talking to the 911 operator and she's trying to resuscitate Robin, and she's crying and she's screaming and it's heartbreaking, but she's also shouting at Lisa. She can see Lisa on her bed and she doesn't know at the time that Lisa is also deceased, and she's just shouting at her to come and help and her like what's happened and what's going on and why, like, come and help me with Robin. And it wasn't until the paramedics turned up that she realised that both Robin and Lisa had unfortunately been murdered. When the police started to investigate the crime scene, they discovered that both Robin and Lisa had been essayed and then had been suffocated. They were able to get together quite a collection of evidence from the crime scene. There was hair, there was semen, but there was also a discarded pair of white socks on the dining table, and a Toyota keyring just randomly left behind. What it did mean is they were able to put together a DNA profile, and they learned that the perpetrator was a white male, and that he had type O blood, which unfortunately is incredibly common. But they managed to put together this DNA profile, so they had that on file. But this was 1990, and there weren't a lot of people to compare the DNA against to be able to find him. Hats off to the police. They searched everywhere. I think they knocked on everyone's door in a vast perimeter of the house. They swabbed and interviewed numerous men, but they found nothing. No one was matching, and nobody knew anything either. One of the things that Jan was upset about when she called the police, and she was actually screaming it, was that the neighbours had not called the police earlier. They must have heard something, they must have seen something. But because there was no gunshot, no screaming from stabbing or anything like that, the perpetrator slipped in and slipped out unseen. And of course, this was decades before people started having Ring cameras and like the amount of CCTV that's around everywhere now. So there was nothing. There was no visual evidence of this person. There was literally just this DNA profile. In the state of Florida at this time, the only criminals that were being DNA checked were people who were convicted of certain crimes. So it wasn't everybody. It was just a select few. And it wasn't until 2009 that Florida implemented the law that all people who came in charged or convicted were DNA checked. So at the time of the case, there seemed nothing more that the police could do. Over the years, there have been social media campaigns. The case has appeared on America's Most Wanted twice. There have been hundreds and hundreds of leads, and all of them have been followed up, but nothing ever came from anything. Nothing ever led anywhere. It was as if the perpetrator just didn't exist. And Jan, bless her heart, she just kept on at the police. She never let them forget. She offered new perspective. She made sure that they were following up on every single lead. She refused absolutely downright refused to believe that the perpetrator wasn't out there somewhere. She knew in her heart that this man was going to be found. I can't imagine how hard it must have been for Jan to keep trying to fight against what must have felt like the impossible. Never having any results, never even having like a shred of anything positive towards this. It must have been heartbreaking, and it continued like this for 26 years. She fought and she pressed on this, and she never let it go for 26 years. And then in 2016, it was as if a miracle happened. In 2016, a man named Joseph Zeiler was arrested. He had been involved in an argument with his eldest son, and this argument had ended up getting violent. And Zeiler had actually ended up shooting his son with a pellet gun, which I didn't know, but apparently is deemed as a deadly weapon. And I guess you could kill someone with a pellet gun. I just never had considered it a deadly weapon, but it is. And so yes, Zeiler was arrested and charged with assault with a deadly weapon. And when he was taken in, because it was after 2009, he was swabbed for DNA. Now his DNA was put into the system, and a match with the CODIS database pinged. I'm not a religious person, but this just feels like an absolute miracle. This guy has stayed off the radar for 26 years. I don't know if he's done anything wrong, but he has not been caught for 26 years. I did find out that in 1990 he did actually go to prison, which is horrible, because if he'd been DNA checked then it would have all been done and dusted real quick. But, you know, hindsight is a wonderful thing, so we're not going to focus on that. But 26 years of probably for... Like, I wouldn't even be surprised if he didn't even think about what he had done, because it's been 26 years. He's obviously assumed that he's got away with it. He's got on with his life. It doesn't bother him. He's got his own kids now. He probably never gave it a second thought, which is horrible, because Jan lived the nightmare every second of every day for those 26 years. And I can assume that it was two very different ends of the spectrum in the way that those 26 years have gone. So Cape Coral PD received a phone call to let them know that a positive DNA result had come in. And so they asked for other samples to be taken so that they could check things and make sure that this was 100% the person that they were looking for. And the results came back with a 1 in 700 billion chance that this was wrong. 1 in 700 billion. So it was his DNA. That is a impossibly minute chance that this could be wrong. Zeiler was a match. And on the 27th of March 2016, he was finally arrested for his crimes. He was charged with 1 count of burglary, 2 counts of sexual battery, and 2 counts of murder in the first degree. On the next day, the 28th of March, it must have been one of Jan's best days of her entire life, and probably the rest of the team as well, because there were a lot of people working on this. There were a lot of people hoping and praying that one day there would be a positive result to this case. But the police held a news conference and told the world that they had finally found the man responsible for the murders of Robin Cornell and Lisa Story. Zyla appeared in court the next day, so on the 29th of March, via a webcam link from the prison, and it then took another 6 years for the case to go to court. Because the case was so old, there was a lot of red tape and paperwork to wade through and to get everything all together, all the evidence together, etc. It took 6 years for this to go to court. Luckily, Zyla was in prison for the whole of this 6 years. He had been set a bond of $500,000. So he wasn't like released on bail or anything like that. He spent those 6 years inside. But the court case was just... It was weird to watch, man. It was really weird. There was some interesting attempts of getting away with this that came from Zyla. Very, very odd behaviour. So he refused to acknowledge anything to do with this. I mean, he still professes his innocence now. He has never admitted to this. So I've got to look at this in like a systematic way, otherwise I'm just going to get myself confused. So firstly, one of the things he did was, a year before the case, he wrote to Jan. Which he says he didn't. He says he wrote to the whole family, but it was addressed to Jan. And he professed his innocence. He said it must have been a member of his family, and so that's why there was a DNA match. And then he tried to convince Jan that they must have hooked up, and that she must have just forgotten about it. But he was trying to say that they must have hooked up, and that was why his DNA was on the sheets. He then even tried to call Jan a pig when he was in court, saying that she mustn't have washed her sheets between the hookup, that never actually fucking happened, and the murders.
Did you suggest, in addition to that, did you tell the people who this letter's addressed to that you slept with Jan Cornell, Janice, and a friend of hers in 1989, and therefore that's why your DNA is in the Courtyards North condominium?
Yes, I thought so, because she didn't wash her sheets.
You know whether or not Miss Cornell washes her sheets?
How I got that is by the information I was given from you was discovery, and I thought that the only way my DNA could have gotten there was me sleeping with Jan Cornell and Leanne Deller.
Did you sleep with Jan Cornell and Miss Deller?
It's possible, because I was here.
Well, now you were here.
I mean, I was here in December of '89. I testified to that earlier. And what I believe happened is I slept with Jan Cornell and Leanne Deller, and they were just too much of a pig not to wash their sheets.
And during your direct exam by counsel, your attorney, you indicate you've never been in their condominium.
I'm speculating that the only way my DNA could have got in there is if I slept with them during December '89 while I was here for the month of December.
And then it would have to follow that your DNA would have stayed viable for let me finish my question. For if it was January, February, March, April, May of 1990, and then, well, okay, I don't want to make it a compound question. Your DNA would have still been there 5 months later.
Yes.
And that's because they're pigs and they don't wash their sheets,
exactly.
Right?
It was very bizarre way of trying to get out of it. Oh, yeah, I must have hooked up with her. I was in the area around such and such time. I must have met her then and hooked up, and then, yeah, she just never washed her sheets. But none of this made any sense, because Jan had never met Zyla. Nobody had met Zyla. No, none of her friends, none of her family members, nobody in the area. Nobody knew this man. So to be saying, oh, I must have hooked up with her 26 years ago, it made no sense whatsoever. He just wanted a reason for his DNA to be in the house that wasn't the actual reason that the DNA was in the house. At one point, he said he had a motorcycle accident, and he didn't remember anything from beforehand, and made it out as if, like, his partner, who had been with him for the whole 26 years, by the way, broke up with him as soon as she found out what he'd done, but she had been with him for 26 years. He tried to make out that his partner, like, looked after him, as in, like, nurse care. She actually turned around firstly and said she'd never seen any behaviour of memory loss in the whole 26 years they'd been together. And also in the way that he spoke about other events, and the way that they interacted, it was obvious that she wasn't his nurse. She didn't look after him for that. So again, something else that on the giant list of excuses that made no sense at all. And as I say, he still hasn't he still hasn't acknowledged that he's done any of this. So after all of his bullshit reasonings for not being guilty, he was found guilty on all charges. And then 6 days later, the same jury actually voted for him to be given the death penalty. It was not a unanimous vote, but it was a vote of 10-2. So the death penalty was given as his sentence. While he was waiting to be given his sentence, Isla asked for his attorney to speak to him, who kind of like, could you come here? Could you come here? Kind of like wanted a little sidebar with the guy. So the attorney walked over to him, at which point Zyla freaking elbowed this guy in the face. He's got his hands chained together, so he like oofed him. So I'm guessing not happy with the result. So he was taken out of the court, obviously calmed the situation down. The attorney wasn't hurt in any way. Actually, he quipped that he'd taken stronger punches. I think he said he used to box, and that he'd taken stronger punches before. But when Zyla returned, the guy who still professes his innocence actually had a mouthpiece. And he sat and he leered at the camera that was in the court. And on the mouthpiece was written the word killer. But he still professes his innocence. So Zyla is currently in prison on death row. And he is actually waiting to hear the outcome of his appeal. He put an appeal in at the beginning of this year, 2025. And he is still waiting for the outcome. I tried to watch the appeal. I tried to understand it. I don't have a law degree. I'm not going to pretend that I do. There is a lot of law terms that I don't understand. But I do have some level of intelligence, so I tried to watch it. The attorney claimed that Zyla's 6th and 8th amendments were violated. So I'm English, so I had to look this up, so I am going to read it. But basically, the 6th Amendment ensures that you have the right to a speedy and public trial, impartial jury, notice of accusation, the right to confront and cross-examine witnesses, the right to call your own witnesses, and the right to counsel. So I don't know if he's trying to imply that maybe the jury weren't impartial. I don't know. I know that there was some talk about things being done in front of Jan and other family members, but family members are always in court, so I'm not really sure what he was trying to get at with that. And then the 8th amendment is no excessive bail, no excessive fines, and no cruel and unusual punishments, e.g. torture or punishments that are disproportionate to the crime. which I think they're trying to say the death penalty is disproportionate. Again, I don't understand how they can say that. The death penalty is an option, and he killed 2 people. But I do know that the death penalty used to have to be a unanimous vote, and it isn't anymore. And they wanted, therefore, it to be looked at again because of this. The thing with appeals is that there is no final deadline for when decision has to be made. So this is still outstanding. This is still being looked into. We will await the final decision. I will update you guys when I know what's happening. I hope, this is my opinion, this is not opinion of anybody else. I hope that he stays on death row, and I hope that he gets his final sentence. He took the lives of 2 people. There was no reasoning. There is no remorse. There's no admittance. There's nothing. He just wants to get away with it. And there's no question in my mind that he's guilty. There's no way that it's not his DNA. There's no way that this didn't happen. I think he just got used to not being blamed for it. I think he got used to getting away with it. And now that it's come up, he's just like, meh, wasn't me. He's not going to take accountability for it. He's not that type of person. I don't even know if he took accountability for shooting his son. I'd be interested in finding out if he was the type of guy who was like, I didn't do it, or it was an accident, or he asked for it. I wouldn't. None of those responses would surprise me in the slightest, absolutely at all. He's just evil. You can see it in his face. He's terrifying to me. He did have a psych evaluation, but there is no medical. There's no medical mental health problems. The guy is just pure evil incarnate. It's just awful. But fuck talking about Zyla. What we take from this story is that there is always hope. There is always a reason to keep going. Never give up looking. I know that there are like hundreds and thousands of cases out there that are cold. But you never know. You never know what's going to come around the corner. You never know what's going to happen one day to the next. Stuff might appear. DNA samples might just suddenly appear. So that was the case of Joseph Zyla. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts and comments below. If you have any other cases that you want me to look into, please let me know. I am keeping a note of those that are suggested for future videos, so please do let me know if there is anybody that you want me to look into. I'm also open to looking at like cold cases and mystery stories, so please, yeah, if you've got anything you want me to look into, please do let me know. If you've got this far and you still haven't clicked that subscribe button, please do. Make sure you look after yourselves and each other. Have a safe week, and I'll see you in the next video.